And yeah, it's one of those days. So, all right, everyone, we're off and running. 12:03, not bad. Can you see my screen okay?
Yes.
All right, great. So Robin is, so this is a Cape Space Lunch and Learn series, and we're doing a bunch of these. So my name's Dale Shabazian. I'm with Cape and Plymouth Magazine and Cape and Plymouth Business Magazine. Our mission is to educate the business community. Again, this is Allison Oberden of Oberden Marketing. Robin may join us later. She's dealing with a technical issue, but Cape Space is a full-service shared workspace in Hyannis and Mashpee. And we're just trying to get together and getting expertise out there and helping folks where we can right now. And today we're going to talk about MailChimp. So just a few things to remember. I think this is sort of advice overall in general when you try something new, especially in marketing. Get advice from your peers. You know, find out who's doing these things, what worked, what hasn't. Get a second pair of eyes on grammar. I am the worst, ironically, in marketing and publishing. My grammar is horrible. I have folks double check everything. Mistakes still happen. Don't give up. You know, if you make a mistake, don't worry about it. You're frustrated, don't worry about it. Progress over perfection, right? So I'm a perfectionist. I think a lot of us are when you're working creatively and maybe in business, depending on your personality. Don't worry about it. Get something professional, get it out there, and worry about over iterations, making it better. And then this is sort of my joke. When all else fails, YouTube it. YouTube is a great resource when you're stuck at a certain place, a screen you don't know how to get past, or something you just can't seem to get through. I'm there all day long, and I've been doing this forever. So don't feel bad. So this is a MailChimp 101. It's intended for folks who haven't used MailChimp, or maybe they kind of started and didn't really do much with it. So what is MailChimp? MailChimp is email marketing software, right? It's hosted off in the cloud. You log into it, you don't download it. Unless there is a mobile app version that you would have to install, and we'll get to a couple things with that later. They claim to be the largest email marketing application. You know, I'm not exactly sure what that means, but there's millions of users. They send billions of emails. They're worldwide. They're pushing towards e-commerce, ability to sell within their system. We're not going to get into a ton of that today. We're going to start small. It's free to start, right? That's the super cool part of it. I think up to 2,000 contacts, it's free. Whereas other mail services start at $20, $30, upwards to $100, depending on the amount of services. So this is a great service to get going with. If you just want to send some emails out to a limited pool of folks. As I mentioned before, one of their biggest competitors is Constant Contact. They're like the industry giant. There's a ton that they both do. And for what we're going to do today, MailChimp is perfect to get started. So, a lot of folks say, well, who am I going to email, right, Allison? So I haven't been collecting emails, or maybe you haven't, like, where do you start? You can't just start with an audience. You can't talk to an audience without an audience, right? So the most popular way to build an audience to read your email newsletters is to import contacts or allow people to sign up from your website or ask people. We're going to learn today that you can actually add people without their permission. That's a real fine line. When I first started, I added all of my customers through my Gmail contacts, and I sent them a first newsletter, and I said, hey, we've done some business together, or we have some kind of connection. I'd like to add you to my newsletter. Here's what I'm going to be saying in my newsletter. And if that's not okay with you, you can click this button and I won't email you again any news. That's kind of on the gray area of what you're allowed to do. If you want to be really safe, you want to get their permission before you add them to the newsletter, before you even send them something. And And you would do that by adding something on your website or emailing them personally and asking them. MailChimp's free up to 2,000 subscribers. A lot of us, if you're in a small business, so a lot of you know me maybe from 118 Group Web Design, company I started here in Cape Cod. We have about 800 subscribers, and for our business size, that's a really good audience. With 800 subscribers locally, business folks, that was a really good audience. It took us several years to get to that point, but these numbers don't have to be huge to make an impact on your business. Mm-hmm. So we're actually going to go through a little demo on how.
Well, I was just going to say too, really quick, just to add to it, it's really, sure. And you just kind of alluded to this, but it's really not the size of the list that matters. It's really the quality of the list. So, like Dale said, if you start, you gather all of your contacts that you communicate with or any existing clients that you have, and it's actually perfectly legal to send out that first email that sort of asks them if they want to be part of your email list. And really, if you get people that say no, don't sweat it, because you don't want to spend time and energy sending emails to those people anyway. And then if you have the people that say yes and they respond positively, then that's exactly who you want in your email list. So don't be afraid to start with a small, high quality list. If you've got 10 people, start there, and then, kind of implement some of these other tactics that Dale talked about as well.
Right. So even 10 emails is better than 0 emails. Mm-hmm. And that's a great point. I think when I started, I think it was around 50 people that I originally added. And they were like people that I really, wanted to talk to or to get information out to. We're going to get, in a little bit, we're going to start to talk about, we'll talk a little bit about what kind of content is good, what's maybe you want to try and stay away from. What can you talk about? But for right now, we're going to show you, we're going to go through the account setup process. I'm going to try and zip through these. I don't want to spend a ton of time on them because you can go through afterwards. But essentially, you go to MailChimp, you sign up, you put in an email and a username. I personally use a different email for anything I sign up for, only because you tend to get a lot of updates, and I just didn't want them to flood in my regular inbox. So I use accounts whenever I sign up for something. So you sign up, it's free. They're going to send you an email to verify that you're a real person, right? So you'll notice a lot with these, with MailChimp, they want to try and keep it authentic. They want to keep bots out. They want it to be, they have to keep this level of quality, because when you send your email, when an email comes from a MailChimp service, it means something. You want those other mail services to let that mail go through. So you're going to have to go and verify your account. You'll pick a plan. Okay, so here I'm showing there's a free plan for 2,000 folks. There are more features that you can move up, kind of out of scope of today, but you can have some more automation type emails, drip campaigns, meaning if someone buys something from you, you can automatically put them to this list, and then they get another email 30 days later asking them how was their experience, or asking for a review, or asking if they have a customer service question. There's tons of things you can do with this. But at the free plan, just sending out newsletters, there's plenty to get started there. It's going to ask for some basic information, a little about you, your business, name of your business, if you have a website. And the reason why they ask them this information is at the bottom, we'll see soon, it'll say something like, here's who I am, here's why I sent this email, here's my information if you want to check out I'm legitimate. It's going to ask for your address. I pick 500 or less subscribers. It'll ask you some basic questions. I think most of us will probably have some original content. I'm not sure any of this stuff actually will matter for us. Do you sell things online? So with MailChimp, you can actually create a website and use the newsletter system to help sell things online. We're not going to go through that today, but that option is there and you can explore that a little bit if you want. Once you get through the account process, you're going to start designing an email. So MailChimp will give you, so a lot of times, you know, you can keep your email simple. It could just be a paragraph of text and a button, or you can make it look really nice with images and columns and links out to other places. And you don't have to know any coding. It's all kind of drag and drop or click and drag. They give you a lot of different options right out of the box. You can just pick a kind of a layout and just plug those pieces in. Allison, do you have what are your thoughts about the different types of layouts that you can pick here?
Yeah, so it really kind of depends on what business you have. So if you're selling products, it's going to kind of narrow it down a little bit for you. If you've got, I think just think about what you're sending out to your audience. And, you know, if it's something, of course, that you're selling products, they make it really simple. They've got a couple of different templates for that. If you want to just do kind of a newsletter or something else, you just think about what you're actually sending to them. And, you know, MailChimp has likely already thought of that and created a nice clean template for you to use. And like Dale said, it doesn't have to be, you know, I occasionally come across clients where they want this really, really long newsletter. And the reality is most people don't have time to read a really long newsletter. So as long as it's clean and consistent with your brand and kind of gets the point across, then I wouldn't, you know, overthink it too much.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because at the magazine, you can imagine there's a lot going on between Cape and Plymouth, and Gmail actually clips the newsletter at a certain point. So, you know, we have our own custom template. We actually use Constant Contact for a different reason, but our email became so long that it got clipped, and you just see a little tiny view of this entire message, right? When you go off kind of designing your own thing, you lose a lot of the best practices. These companies, they know how to get emails into an inbox. So I always try, when you're beginning, pick with something that they give you. It's a tried and true system that they've sent billions of emails likely with.
Yeah, and then I don't know if you're going to touch on this later in the presentation, but one of the things is you mentioned getting in the inbox, and I think just to kind of clarify there, there's different things that you could do to your emails that you're going to pretty much automatically end up in somebody's spam box. And so like Dale was just saying, is MailChimp has designed this tool and these templates so that you can kind of follow the best practices without even realizing it, so that you have the best chance of getting in front of people. If you end up in a spam box, nobody's going to see it. So really just kind of stick with the basics if you're just getting started. And then, you know, I don't know if you're going to do any engagement conversation.
Yeah, we'll talk about that a little bit.
Yeah.
So basically you pick a template and you click on the little areas that they give you, and a little editor pops up. Again, it's all kind of drag and drop. You click the logo, it says, where's your logo? MailChimp will keep a little library for you, you know, but at first you're going to have to upload these things. I would recommend, you know, any pictures or any logos, try to keep a white background. Email is inherently a white background. So try to get your logo either on a transparent or white background. Reality is you have to just kind of dive in and look at this and play around with it. It's not going to be, you know, I would say it takes a couple hours to kind of go through this process and get something basic down. And then again, progress over perfection. Don't dwell on it too much. Once you kind of go through and you plug and play all the areas of the template that they gave you, it's going to ask you some obvious questions, right? Who are we going to send this to? Who is it coming from? What's the subject line, right? These are all kind of big questions you need to think about. We'll get to the two-part. I'll show you a quick thing on how to get your contacts in there. but who is this email coming from, right? So does this come from Dale Shabijan? Does it come from Cape and Plymouth Magazine? Does it come from maybe one of your project developers or someone who is dedicated to customer service? You have to think about that, because when someone when it comes into their inbox, you want that person to have some familiarity with the email, with who the email is coming from. And then when they hit reply, an email is going to go back to that person. Now, you can change this from email to email. I personally try to keep it consistent. We have it come from one person. That's just the way that we do it. You'll have to decide for you. Subject line, this is a big one, as Allison said. You know, it was weird. Email, would you agree, Allison? Email kind of became passe for a while at some point. And then it seems like it's made a comeback.
Yeah, it's had like a resurrection. I mean, in my experience, I do a lot of different types of marketing, and email to me is one of the most valuable, because you think about what you're doing, you're basically talking directly to potential customers or people that might refer customers. So for the subject line, I mean, for the from address, like you were just saying, I mean, I'd recommend, if this is your first email blast, maybe your business is somewhat new and you're grabbing contacts from your personal contact list and they know your name, perhaps, you know, you start sending it from you. Because the more people that actually open it, the better you'll get into more inboxes versus spam boxes going forward. So that's kind of one of those engagement metrics I was talking about. And then the subject line, you just need it to be really hyper compelling, because again, if they see it's from you and they recognize the name, and then the subject line is really what gets them to actually open the email. And if you've put all this time and effort into crafting this perfect newsletter or this perfect email, and then your subject line kind of falls flat, then they don't even get to see it. And so typically on the shorter side, you don't want like a really long sentence for your subject line. Sometimes I've found that having like an actionable statement, or like 3 ways to solve a problem or something like that, just something that's going to really be more focused on the customer and solving their problems, really.
Right. There are a lot of case studies on the number of characters or the number of the words you can use in a subject line. You can use emojis to some extent. I personally like to have the finger pointing towards the subject line. We play around, we send a weekly newsletter, and you know, it used to be regional business news, and then we changed it to something like the finger pointing, regional business news, poll contest, and something else. And we had a higher engagement. And then we added something to it and it was a little lower. Now, you know, you can't just send one email and something happens and it goes up 10% and you can point to one thing. It's kind of like a thing you got to feel out over time. And for me to open an email, I have to see something, and I think we're all like this. Yeah, there has to be a reason for that email. It has to be a reason for me to open it. It has to catch my attention some way. And at some point, I almost even appreciate if I learn a little bit about it before. Maybe it has nothing to do with me. Some of our vendors will say things like, you know, important message for blah, blah, blah users, right? Or important message for these types of people. Even if I don't have that service, at least I know like there's some kind of action there. It's not just a spammy type message. So you have to play around with that. Again, you know, get feedback from peers. On this slide, you see a little red arrow with send a test email. Send a test email to yourself, forward it to somebody. There are a lot of safeguards in place and to help you from keeping a mistake if you're fearful. And, you know, if you remember at the beginning of the seminar, I said, don't give up. If you make a mistake, it's not a huge deal. billion-dollar companies make mistakes. As long
I
as
sent
you,
an email with an error in it to 8,000 people once.
it happens. I mean, we have 3 people that sometimes look at a newsletter, and this will be a best practice we show later. A link will go to the wrong blog, or something's capitalized it shouldn't be. I mean, it happens. You try to minimize it, but I mean, at some point, you deal with it and move on.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, always. So I guess if something does happen and it's something where like the link is to the wrong place, go ahead and send that second email. Oops, we made a mistake. Check this link. Things like that. Like, don't be afraid to, correct it. And then back on subject lines, just really quickly, is like you were saying, email was kind of passe for a period of time when social media became really popular. Everyone, the kids don't read their emails. Well, I mean, I live out of my email, and it takes
Right.
a really solid subject line and a very specific need for me to actually look at it. I mean, I spend it like an hour a day just deleting emails. And then over Christmas break, I go and unsubscribe. So email is actually really competitive right now. So it's important to kind of stand out from the other noise that people might be getting in their inboxes.
Right. I think, well, actually, we'll get to that a little bit later on when we talk about content. Once you actually send, this is obviously a test account that I set up. Once you send your email, your newsletter out, or however you've formatted this, this messaging, if you go to your campaign screen, right? A campaign is a group of 1 or more emails. You'll see that newsletter, and it will tell you the opens and the clicks. A 20% open rate is considered good. Anything higher than that is great. I think obviously clicks are going to depend on how much content is in the newsletter and how much you're clicking out to. Don't be discouraged. I think at a minimum level, if your customers are getting an email from you and they're seeing you're putting in some kind of effort, don't be offended if they're not interested, right? What does it say when you send someone an email? It says you're thinking about them, you're open for business, you're looking for new business, you're looking for new clients. That door is open. Whether or not they choose to walk through it, that's not important at that time. What's important is at some point, if you keep this consistent, we'll talk about that later, there may be a time where that email is really relevant to them, okay? So just keep that in mind as we're coming through here.
Then back to the rates really quick too. So for open rates and click rates, so the first thing is there's like industry benchmarks that you could go and research based on what type of business you have. So that's one thing, but also bear in mind that the size of your list is going to drastically affect the percentages. So if I've got a list of 2 people and one person opens it, 50% open rates, amazing.
That's amazing.
Right. So, but like I deal a lot of times with lists that are 8 to 10,000 people. And so we really just strive for like a 10% open rate and like a 1% click rate, just knowing that that one person that opens, or that small group of people that open it, that's who we hyper focus on going forward. So it's a good way to gauge the level of interest given the group of people that you've collected over time.
Right. And I think, if you have a business that folks really rely on, if our printer sends us an email about changes in the post office, I'm really interested in what that has to say. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. If it's more of a social type email check-in, I'm less likely to read that. Right now, if you have information that affects somebody in, the current business climate, there's a good chance someone's going to read it, especially if it pertains to how you can service them. So just keep that in mind.
Are we going to talk at all about segmentation, or is that a little?
I didn't go into that, but we can if you want to.
All right, maybe at the end we'll talk about it.
Okay. So once you set up, so for us, we kind of have this template that we like, and then we will replicate one email just to the next, and we just keep improving it and replicating it each time we send it. We send our email weekly. You can go through this whole process again, but there is a tool in place where you can take something that you already have and then change that if you like the way that format looks. We didn't actually go into this. Do you want to talk about adding subscribers and segmenting and all that fun stuff?
Well, yeah. So I guess the one thing I would say is that, so if you're going to be sending an email, you've got your kind of group that you're going to start with, and that group might be comprised of like prior clients, current clients, or if you're e-commerce, they've purchased from you, or maybe it's just colleagues. Like I have my business list is really comprised largely of colleagues in the hopes that they'll refer business to me at a different point. But the point is that when you're putting your list together at first, when you first send your email, I think it's a good idea to kind of get that sort of their blessing for you to start emailing. So you reach out, I'm going to be sending out a monthly newsletter. Please let me know if you don't want to receive further emails from me. Then you have a smaller list, and you want to, I think you're able to tag people in MailChimp. Is that just me?
Yeah, so as you were talking, I logged in. You can go to your audience tab.
Yep. So
you can import contacts. You can, they give you sign up forms that you can add to your website.
Mm-hmm.
You can manually add a subscriber.
Mm-hmm.
And what Allison's saying is if you want to, so some examples of how you might tag or segment folks, just like you said, is you might have customers. You may have certain types of customers. So, at the magazine, we might have people who get weekly news, and then I might have a list for people who have attended a webinar. I might at some point say, hey, you attended a webinar for MailChimp. Thanks for checking it out. Here's our feedback form. By the way, if you want to know about future webinars, click here and we'll let you know.
Mm-hmm.
So then what I can do is if I add these folks and tag them to webinars, I could send out a group to just a webinar saying, hey, by the way, we've added a MailChimp 2, or we've added this, or we've added that. Are you interested? Here's a link.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of different ways you can divide your audience up and give them the most relevant content, right? Is the point of what you're saying.
Yeah, right. So there's I don't want to overcomplicate it. So I would encourage everybody to go in, collect your first list and send it out there. But then as you're going along, really try to think about when you're thinking about the next email you're going to send or looking down the future of the emails that you're going to send, think about maybe you just want to target your customers or your past clients or people who have purchased from you in the past. And then just think about what you want to get from them. Are you just trying to stay in front of them, sort of in a branding or an awareness campaign? Are you trying to kind of reinvigorate some future purchases if they're past customers, things like that? And that's why tags are helpful, because then maybe you don't send, all of your database an email every single month. Maybe certain segments, you kind of focus in on at different times, but you can kind of still be collecting the rest of those people on your list.
Right.
Yeah.
Something you don't want to use the segmentation for, that we will talk about in a few minutes, is you don't want to create a sales list. You don't want to go out and buy a bunch of emails or go to a bunch of websites, get the emails, and then blast them on about your service.
Yeah.
This tool is really meant for, you have some kind of prior connection with the person and you need a way to, a personal email is always best, but if you have a personal connection with a group of people, this is a way to just kind of broadcast a message out. It's not meant.
I mean, and just think about too, when you're looking in your email and you get an email from some random person and that you had never provided contact information, and then they just take it upon themselves to send you an email. I mean, in some cases, like we talked about, kind of getting that permission at the get-go. But it can really have the opposite effect, and it's just a waste of your time, because half of those people will opt out immediately, and then the rest of them won't, they'll never open your emails. So it's really,
Block it. They
yeah,
could
I mean,
block it
people,
or
it
report
used
it.
to be thought of as like, it was one of the biggest things. You could purchase lists of target customers, different companies, and it was, people did it all the time. But now there's just a lot more laws related to email and people's privacy and things like that. So really just it's kind of a, I don't even know how to describe it. I mean, it's tough work to build a list. But when done properly, it's very, very valuable. I mean, for a service-based business, for me, I would say my contact list is maybe one of the most valuable, tangible things in my business.
Good point. Folks, feel free to ask any questions. You can use the raise the hand feature or just write in the chat box. We've kind of gone through how to send that first email. And if you have any questions about the platform itself, you can ask them in here and we'll try and address them live, or I'll record a little video or something and get it back to you. For the remainder of the webinar, we're going to talk about some best practices, which includes good content, a subject line, etc. So feel free to just ask your questions. So, you know, I said earlier, for me to open an email, and probably for everyone, you have to have a reason, right? So what are some things that we might use this platform for? Newsletters is an easy one. Maybe you hired a new staff member, right? If your customers may be interacting with that staff member, what a great way to introduce them before they actually have to interact with them. Any kind of company news, you move your office, change your number, new services, just general kind of, when I was at 118 Group, we called it leave a trail. You're just following back with people, you know, you do a service for them and then you kind of move on, but it's nice just to come back and just keep that connection with them. Obviously, Cape Space has a lot of events. We have a lot of events. That's a great way to use this system to let people know about an event that happened and where they can get the information for it, as well as upcoming stuff, as well as, you know, asking for feedback, or, hey, do you have an idea that I can incorporate in my next event? What would you like to see? So this just doesn't have to be one way. It can be a door opener. News coverage and blogs, that may or may not apply to a lot of us, but that is definitely a top use of the tool, or a top use. Shopping guides, new products, if you're, you know, you have something relevant to your type of service, or you make things, introducing new ways that you've made things or improved something is a great way to put it in a newsletter, as well as the product itself. Testimonials, cover story, customer stories. I think with this one, you want to be careful a little bit. This shouldn't just be about you, but maybe you could give a story about how your product or service was used. How did someone benefit from it? So if someone's using your product or service and you highlight a way someone else used it that can benefit another person, that's something nice to talk about, right? If I'm already buying your service and you're giving me more ideas on how to use it, that's obviously very helpful to a customer. Tips for writing. Obviously useful and straightforward, less is more, unless you're poetic or maybe an author and you're sending out short stories. Time to read these is very important. We want to get as much as we can right up front. A lot of times in newsletters, we're going to see some examples. It might be sort of a teaser, a couple sentences, and a read more, right? In our newsletter, we don't have space to put 4 paragraphs of stuff. It's just kind of little bite-sized pieces of information, and then they can go out and get more if they want to. We already talked about lengthy emails. They will get cut off at some point, especially in Gmail. I'm not sure about Outlook or other email services. CTAs is call to action. So make your call to action obvious and clear. So if you have a webinar, the button might say register now. If it's informational only, it might say something like learn more. If you're selling something and you can buy it, you can say buy now. Allison's call to action is huge no matter what we do. Do you have any recommendations?
Well, I was just going to say, I mean, before you even start your email, you think about, okay, who am I sending this to and what action do I want them to take? And then your content should be kind of driven from those decisions. So we talked about newsletters. I mean, in my world, I'm almost 1,000% digital marketing, and I am a service-based business. And so anything that I'm putting out on social or an email or anything is going to try and drive them back to my website. So my call to actions are almost entirely going to be, read more here, or I don't even know. That's pretty much it. Read more here or reach out if you have questions. But so if you have, I mean, you pretty much covered everything, but I think ultimately you want to think about who you're sending it to and what you want them to do, and then make it very clear and obvious within the content that you've just put together. So if you've got a really busy email with lots of images and everything's all over the place and tons of wording, then sometimes people get bored or get distracted before they see that kind of button, which is what you really want them to do.
Right.
So.
Great points. So some more best practices when you're working with MailChimp or any newsletter system, if you move beyond it. As Allison said, having a point to the email, create a schedule. I've seen everything from once a week to once a quarter. We help one company with a newsletter. They're a heating and cooling company. We send one in the spring, get ready for summer. We send one in the fall, get ready for winter. They're so busy in the summer, it doesn't make sense. We're trying to help them. We're trying to help customers start to think about their cooling and their air filtration needs in March and April, not in July 4th, right? So think about the timing of how you're, be consistent about it, set a reminder, set a calendar reminder, and try and keep it consistent. Give yourself enough time to put something meaningful together. Edit the content. If you do send it frequently, don't send the same thing over and over because you don't have new information. You gotta be sending relevant, timely information. With that said, from email to email, if you are linking out to your website like Allison is, double check your links. I find we'll say like someone will write something and they'll say, hey, read more. And the read more goes to the read more from last month.
Yeah.
I'm the #1 offender of this. I do it all the time. That's why it's nice. I check every action on your email before you send it out. Use the send test email function we looked at.
Yeah, and have somebody else double check it too. I mean,
I think that's a good idea.
complacent. Like I'm like, yep, click, click, click. I checked everything, and then inevitably there's something.
Yep, it's always when you rush when something goes wrong.
Or when you get too comfortable with it too. It's like, I've done this a million times. Just you're never too experienced to make a mistake. So.
Absolutely. So some other best practices: pick a color palette and stick to it.
Yeah.
If you haven't heard the term on brand, try to stay on brand. If you're a fun company, feel free to use a little bit of maybe a funner font in the headlines. Just keep in mind that MailChimp will give you a preset amount of fonts. And the reason is because mail clients will only render certain fonts. So you want to stick to the options that they give you, but feel free, if you're a serious brand, try and stick to your colors. If you're fun, have a little bit of fun with it. So rule of thumb for e-commerce and service companies, the frequency of the emails may align with how often you send it. I use the heating and cooling company. Their two busiest times of the year are summer and winter, right? Good times. If you're selling a product, it might be like, Valentine's Day, St. Patrick's Day, Mother's Day, Father's Day, blah, blah,
Yeah.
blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, the frequency definitely depends entirely on your business and honestly what you have to say. Right? So,
Great point.
if you don't have any new products coming up, maybe you have some sales or something like that, that might be worth, so just, I'm a big proponent of the whole marketing calendar for, the quarter, or at least, so, try to think of what's coming up, what's coming down the calendar, any hopefully events that you're participating in, or if you're a service-based business, or if you've got new products coming down the road, or if you want to offload some products and have a sale, or holidays that make a difference, like Dale was mentioning. You might as well just keep a calendar and earmark those emails just so that they don't catch you by surprise every single time.
Right. Good points. So this slide, maybe I should have put earlier on, but you can actually add emojis. I put the slide in here. We'll make this presentation available after the fact. These are the amount of times that they appear. Obviously not, you get a preset amount of emojis. Obviously they don't make sense for every business. We recommend them sparingly, only when it makes sense. I think a lot of these things, just because they offer doesn't mean you should use it. So think about, it's there, we talk about it. Think about if it applies to you.
To your brand, right? So like if you have a very serious business, maybe emojis don't make sense. But like Capeology, I think they use emojis in theirs, and they're fun. It's a fun brand. It's a kind of a lifestyle thing. So it really depends. And if it comes from a serious brand, it almost seems off-putting, or it's almost odd. Like if my accountant sent one with a emoji in it, depending on what it was, it might be a little bit like, oh, that's weird. But so yeah,
it would be appropriate if it was like a smiley face and it was
your
like
return's coming soon, or
exactly, or 5 new tax breaks for 2021 with a smiley face.
Yeah,
totally get it. Not payroll taxes are due Tuesday with a smiley face.
Don't forget your paid family medical leave.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think you get the idea. We're having too much fun here. What not to do. So we already just said this. Don't send it too often.
So I just have to clarify this. So too often, again, it goes back to your business. I have people that, I've had this conversation a million times. You can research online and you can find best practices around frequency. And it's always going to come down to, are you providing something that the audience who you're sending it to is going to find valuable? And that will be determined by your open rates and your click rates, meaning how many people open it and how many people click on whatever your call to action is. So if you have something hyper valuable and hyper relevant to the particular audience every single week or multiple times a week, by all means, but there's not as many companies that are like that, then, where it makes more sense to do less frequent. So I didn't mean to like jump on you there, but I have had this conversation a lot lately.
I'm glad you said that. A really important part of MailChimp, and I would encourage you to go through the dashboard. It will actually tell you if people are unsubscribing. I think they send an email summary too. It will tell you if folks are unsubscribing. If you're seeing folks drop off, it's time to take a step back and think about the content that you're sending.
Should we talk about what these mean? So opened, clicked, unsubscribed, bounced, like that could be confusing. So opened is obvious. So that it comes into their inbox, they actually click on it and open it. Clicked it means that if you had a button, learn more, register here, check out our new product, click, means they clicked. That could also indicate that actually I think MailChimp splits it out. But so unsubscribed is, of course, MailChimp is going to automatically put a footer or an element to your footer, which is the very bottom of your email that says, if you do not want to receive these emails, click here to unsubscribe. So it's a law that that needs to be included in all emails. So Unsubscribed is somebody saying, you know what, I'm not loving these emails. I don't even know where they got my name. It's just not relevant for me anymore. Click, I'm going to just say, I don't want to get these emails anymore. And you cannot send them an email from out of MailChimp. And really, you should not send them any other emails if you switch tools. And then bounced means, what does bounced mean in MailChimp? Oh, bounce, sorry. I was thinking website bounces. So bounced in email means that you sent it to an email address that was invalid. So these are hard bounces, right?
Yeah, this is, so if it's Dale at capeplymouthbusiness.com, maybe it was Dale at capeplymouthbusiness.net. It's just the
Right.
wrong email, or a letter's
So it'll
missing.
just,
It's just a
yeah.
mailbox that doesn't exist.
Yeah, and sometimes people, I mean, that happens. If it's a business email address, it happens much more frequently where, you just lose track of them, or you lose track of their current email address. You can go ahead and research these people because you'll see the list of who bounced, and you say, oops, that was just an error when I uploaded the list. I just misspelled the name or something, and you can correct it and add them in the next time. But unsubscribed is they have just let you know that it's not you, it's them, and they no longer want to receive your emails. So like Dale said, if you start to see those creep up above more than a couple per email, you should evaluate kind of what the frequency and or kind of what you're sending, or maybe it's to who you are sending it to. Maybe you're sending great stuff, it's just going to the wrong people.
Right. If you start with a really good list and you're putting out relevant content at a good frequency, your unsubscribed should be low. It's got to be one of those three things.
It takes a fair amount for most people to go through the effort of unsubscribing. So you've really kind of pushed, or there are people that are really on top of their inboxes. But I would say generally speaking, a handful at most per send, depending on your list, how big it is.
Right, good call. If you go further down, after you send your email, you get some more statistics about how it performed. I sent this test today, so there's really not a lot of data here, and I only have one person in my list, me. But if you had more folks in here, there would be some more data that you could look at. It will tell you the links that were clicked out, who opened it, how many times they opened it. There are some more advanced analytics that you can get into beyond that, but this is all really important stuff. If you're publishing content and it's too far down and maybe it's not getting clicked, it could be a couple things. Maybe it was cut off, maybe it was too far down, maybe someone wasn't interested. You have to kind of evaluate that in your structure. And a newsletter is a lot like a website where you want to put the most important stuff at the top.
Yeah.
Unless you have a teaser, this is a little trick, a little teaser in your subject line that might be really interesting. You put at the bottom to force them to scroll all the way through the newsletter.
I saw an email recently, and there was like a trivia at the top, and it was, see below and it was really, compelling trivia, like, oh, what does that mean? And see, I ended up scrolling down and clicking on something else subsequently. So stuff like that.
Okay. If you were selling through MailChimp, you'd have some e-commerce numbers. We won't go into that today, but if you have some questions on that, we can help. So we got about 9 minutes left. Do we have any questions before I get too far ahead of myself? No. Okay. Just a couple slides left, and then we'll open the floor to questions. We already talked about this. Oh, using content that's not yours. I think that's fairly self-explanatory. Be careful with photos too. You can't just go stealing photos off of websites. That is a copyright infringement. There are some great, if you don't have the luxury of hiring a photographer, and you have to have photos, Pexels, Unsplash, Pixabay, even Adobe Stock, maybe. Those are places, Adobe Stock charges money, but the other places I mentioned, they have free, copyright-free images you can use. They look kind of stock.
Yeah. The other thing about images too, really quick, is that with some email like my Outlook is really secure. So the images will be like, I can't see the images until I actually click a button that says download images. So do not have your entire email comprised just of images. Make sure that you have, you know, some description under it, or, you know, I think you can do like you can name the image within MailChimp as well. So make sure you're always kind of filling in any place that you can describe the image, so that if the image isn't showing, at least they know what was meant to be there.
Good call. So we just have a couple quick examples here. So this one, the one on the left, is designed in Canva. It's just a picture. You know, it's obviously like a flash sale. Shake off the winter blues, enjoy an evening with us. Here are the details, fine print at the bottom, off you go. On the right is our friends at Cape Cod Ready Mix, and we all know concrete is a thrilling subject to be discussing. But they actually have a lot of fun things going on. This is a Red Sox delivery truck. Just something fun like, hey, you know, here's what we're doing. You can't, it's unfortunately cut off for here, but you know, they had some municipal projects going on in town that you may have recognized that they were part of. They might mention that they do stuff for Habitat for Humanity. Anything they're out there doing goes in that newsletter. And I recommend you do the same. I think keeping that touch point and that relevance with your customers and the community is it goes a long way. Even though this is a newsletter that comes out, it gives someone kind of a peek into what you're doing. That's it. So Allison, anything else? Any questions? We've got 5 minutes left.
Yeah, I just don't be afraid. I mean, my motto in life right now is progress over perfection. I would say most people on your list are probably going to support you, and they won't probably criticize you as much as you might criticize yourself. So don't get tangled up in the visual so much. Just really think about, you know, what you're providing in the content, and just move forward. Keep going.
Great advice. All right, so if there's no other questions, we can adjourn, and we can adjourn 5 minutes early.
Perfect.
Going once, going twice.
We have a chat that says, would love a part 2 talking about segments. I have a bunch of people on my list, but need to break them up and not sure how to start. I would be happy to do that.
Sure. I didn't actually see that question. Oh, it's in the chat. I'm sorry. I see it now. If you want, Allison, do you want to put your contact information into the chat?
Yeah, I will. Where is it? Okay, so to all, I'm going to all panelists and all attendees, so.
I'm gonna put in my.
That's my direct email.
All right, great. With that said, everyone have a great day. Thanks for attending. I hope this was useful. I've put my email in there. I will send out a feedback request at some point, just saying, hey, how do we do? What can we do better next time? We're gonna put this on our website, put it in our own newsletter. And any other topics that you'd like to see, please feel free to forward them on. We've got at least 6 or 7 now that we're doing. And I didn't say this at the beginning. I like to do these because it keeps me on my toes. And I've had a ton of help in my career, always still getting help. And any way that we can give back a little bit is just like a way of me helping the next person. So please feel free to reach out. And Allison, I'll give you the last word.
Same thing. I mean, for anybody that knows me, probably is sick of hearing me talk about marketing. So any and all questions, I'm happy to chat more about them. So
awesome. Well, good luck everyone out there, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.